Good morning, Kitchissippi. It is Saturday, November the 11th, Remembrance Day. This is a video version of the 116th Kitchissippi Ward newsletter. I'll be publishing the newsletter by email sometime this weekend. You can subscribe today at kitchissippiward.ca. In the newsletter this week, first, you'll see some archaeological testing underway in Rochester Field that's connected to the upcoming LRT work. You'll see some equipment in the field, maybe beginning on Tuesday. It is weather dependent. Digging up a few patches here and there to take a look for archaeologically significant material. There's a link to more information in the newsletter. Another reminder, you can help to shape Ottawa's music strategy. The Ottawa Music Industry Coalition and the City of Ottawa have a survey online right now asking you whether you're an artist, a fan, or just an interested resident, how we can improve Ottawa's music industry. Of note on that, there is some new money connected to developing a music strategy for Ottawa in the proposed budget. Take a look in the newsletter for the link to take that survey. The Committee of Adjustment, as always, we are very, very busy. The agenda for November the 15th is up, in which you'll see that at 467 Golden again, the owner is seeking to demolish the existing dwelling as well as garage, divide the land, create two separate parcels. They're seeking some variances associated with the lot width and area, as well as a variance on the allowed height of the proposed new buildings from 8 to 8.4 meters. At 505 Churchill, I did address this at length in the previous newsletter, but that will be heard on November the 15th. Again, they're proposing to build two triplexes. I have sought from the architect and the developer a commitment that those will stay triplexes for the foreseeable future. We've gotten that commitment from them, and I'll be writing to the Committee of Adjustment just to remind them of that commitment. Also at 415 Ravenhill, they're seeking to update the variances that they were granted in 2015 in order to build a three-story, three-unit dwelling unit with new permissions that take into account that we have since enacted stricter infill guidelines. They're seeking some variances in order to come into conformity with that. And at 386 Winston, the owner is seeking to subdivide the property into two, leaving the existing dwelling on one parcel and the existing create a new three-unit dwelling on the other. With the severance, the parcel will not be in conformity with the bylaw, so they are seeking some variances associated with lot width and area. There is no agenda yet online for the hearing that will be held on December the 6th, but we do have the decisions now for the November 1st hearing. Really interesting, at 1130 Wellington, which is where Blue Panda Realty was proposing to put a real estate office, the Committee of Adjustment has refused the required variance. Offices aren't normally permitted on the traditional main street. They don't animate the street or create the pedestrian traffic that the zoning is intended to accomplish. The city did go to the Committee of Adjustment, express its concerns about that lack of pedestrian traffic, and in a unanimous decision, the Committee of Adjustment has refused that variance. We'll see whether or not that goes to the Ontario Municipal Board. At 436 Roosevelt, the reapplication for the severance was approved, and at 479 Bevan, the subdivision was approved. The committee did make a note to the applicant to make sure that the properties are draining independently. We've got a couple more pop-up office hours coming up before the holidays. On Saturday, November the 18th, I'll be at the Dovercourt Recreation Centre from 11 until 2 p.m. And on Tuesday, December the 5th, I'll be at the bridgehead that is at Golden for an evening pop-up from 6 until 9 p.m. I am here at Reed Park, where finally work looks very much set to get underway. I was informed a few weeks ago that the tender for the park redevelopment construction was successfully closed on budget, so work is actually set to get underway fairly soon. On November the 17th, they are going to close the park for 1 full year. What you'll see over the next several months is that the contractor is proposing to do the fill cap over the existing park in order to do that environmental remediation. They're also going to do a little bit of the demolition work associated with some of the play equipment that is not being retained. Then when the spring comes, they're going to get underway with the balance of the work in order to redevelop the park. We have plans for that online. I am very excited to finally get that park construction underway. I do recognize that this is going to be a hardship for dog walkers who use the park on a regular basis, as well as having the wading pool closed for a season. But again, excited to see the park redevelopment, and a year from now we'll have a brand new park here. In the newsletter, a link to our quarterly ward forum. I am excited this time to have Steve Willis. He's the new General Manager of Planning and Economic Development at the city as our guest speaker. We'll also be receiving all the usual community updates from the BIAs and from the community associations. I hope you'll join us for that on November the 27th at Happy Goat Coffee. That's at 35 Laurel from 6 until 8 p.m. The Crime Prevention Ottawa, one last note, they are recruiting for the board. There is a link in the newsletter to the kind of information that they're seeking. Those nominations close off on November the 17th. If you are interested in serving on the board of Crime Prevention Ottawa, have a skill set that you feel would be valuable or perspective, please do take a look at the newsletter, follow the information that's in there, and get that application in before November the 17th. Bunch of fall fairs, of course, in the newsletter. Unitarian holds theirs on November the 18th. We also have the Hintonburg Artisan Market on Sunday, November the 12th. The Hintonburg Community Association hosts its awesome craft fair on November the 25th from 10 until 4. All Saints Westboro Village Fair is on November the 18th. Shrek musical put on by locally based production company Orpheus is going to be at the Center Point Theatre from November 17th until 26th. I'm going to do a cameo on November the 23rd. I believe on opening night, the mayor will be making a cameo in that show as well. Do get your tickets today. There is a link in the newsletter. Also very important, the Community Association annual general meetings continue for the next several weeks. Civic Hospital holds its on November the 14th. That's Monday. Sorry for the late notice on that one. McKellar Park hosts its on November the 19th. They're going to have a bunch of updates, including having Ottawa Police Services on hand to talk about home and neighborhood safety. Westboro Community Association hosts its annual general meeting on November the 21st, and on November 29th, I believe, rounding it out, the Westboro Beach Community Association will be holding its annual general meeting. They're promising to have a very quick business meeting, and they're going to put about an hour and a half or so that night into talking about developing a community vision for the NCC lands between Westboro Beach and Island Park Drive. Should be a very interesting discussion. With each of those 4 annual general meetings, I of course will be on hand to provide some updates as well as to field a few questions. At City Hall this week, it is a very busy time right now. The budget, as many of you I'm sure saw, was introduced to Council on Wednesday. It is a 2% tax increase, no surprise there, that has been proposed. I do have a number of concerns with the budget. I think with respect to what we can all agree are core services, the budget will not allow for many of the streets in our ward to be repaved as they so desperately need to be. I'm thinking about streets like Iona. I was looking at some of the degradation on Clarendon. Armstrong Street, Roosevelt is one that I point to fairly frequently. This budget doesn't provide any money to accelerate those resurfacings or repavings. That's a problem. I also believe that the budget will once again severely underfund the amount of money that we're putting into snow operations. In this ward, we are seeking an improvement in our snow operations, particularly on our sidewalks. I believe that we are consistently underfunding the snow budget by around $10 million a year. This 2018 budget proposes to put somewhere between $2 and $3 million more into that, but that still leaves what I believe will be a $7 million gap. There is no new funding in order to help community agencies that are providing very valuable services get into a city funding stream. Ecology Ottawa, there's a link in the newsletter, has put out its press release to say that the money that's been added is largely just new names for money that are existing funding streams. So a number of problems with the budget. It is our duty as city councillors to pass a budget that is going to be balanced. I don't believe that we'll finish up the year in a balanced position without making a number of cuts to some of the services that we say say we're going to provide in the budget, which makes it very difficult for me to, in good conscience, support that. I'll be delving deeper into the newsletter over the course of the, into the budget over the course of the weekend and next several days. I am very interested to hear your thoughts. The budget, however, on a good news front, does confirm some of the key priorities that we have in this ward, including the construction of the Byron traffic calming and cycling improvements, the Richmond Churchill pedestrian improvements, La Roche Park environmental remediation. I'm personally thrilled to see a little bit of money, very modest, go into the development of our music strategy. Do write to me with your thoughts on the budget. This week is going to be extraordinarily busy at Planning Committee. We have set 3 full days aside to listen to public delegations and make a decision on whether or not to grant the Salvation Army permission to build its new shelter in Vanier. This is something that's been well covered in the press. I have a number of concerns about that proposal. I'm not sure that a traditional main street is the right place to put a shelter, and again, I can link that back into the decision that the committee just made with respect to an office use on our traditional main street, and a bigger picture question of where do housing dollars go? Do we perpetuate a shelter model, or do we do a 180 to try to change how we house vulnerable populations? Big questions, 3 full days at committee to hear the public delegations. It'll be a very interesting week on that front. Also, this week I'm pursuing a few more discussions around how to handle Scott and Carruthers, that intersection. When the 175 Carruthers development goes in, we had thought that it was going to be turned into a 2-way traffic entry egress from the point at which the 175 garage egresses onto Carruthers. City has told us that that is not possible, certainly not for any reasonable amount of money, but there are some interesting developments coming up down the road in terms of building protected intersections as part of the complete streeting of Scott as we move forward into a post-LRT world. So we're working on some discussions with neighbors around that. I'll be going to both of our BIA's board meetings, and also I'm looking forward to attending that Civic Hospital traffic calming. There is a City of Ottawa order, the Order of Ottawa will be presented this week. I'm looking forward to helping hand out an Order of Ottawa to Dr. Joseph Strauss. Many of you remember him from JDS Vitel. As well, an honorary Kitchissippian, Sheila White, is also getting recognized with an Order of Ottawa this week. She, of course, being the proprietor of Time and Again down on Wellington Street, and such a huge part of this community. Kitchissippi, I do hope that you will read the budget. I have a link to it in the newsletter. Certainly there's a lot of high-level material, but if you want to delve in, all the various different operating and capital budgets are there in some detail. Take a look. Let me know what you think. Otherwise, thank you very much for watching, and have a great week, Kitchissippi.